This tutorial is for those days when you literally have 15 minutes to do your makeup and it needs to be realistic. It needs to look like everyday makeup, but that you've made a little bit of an effort. This looks super natural in daylight and it actually took me less than 15 minutes, but I'm giving you that as a parameter for picking up your brushes, wetting your sponge, getting products out of your drawer. That will all add to your 15 minutes. On top of my skincare and my sunscreen, I'm applying a foundation. My foundation of choice today is the Armani Luminous Silk. I go for this on days when I want a little bit of extra coverage, but for it to look so much like second skin. I prefer to wear a tinted SPF on a daily basis, but this gives me a little bit more coverage than that, but it still makes my skin look like skin. You can still see my freckles through it. That way I don't have to feel paranoid when I'm going out that people can see my makeup. I want it to look as natural as possible. This just gives me a little bit more confidence, and as you can see, I'm just applying it with my hands because I want a very sheer coverage. If you prefer additional coverage or you feel funny applying it with your fingers, use a brush or a sponge. I always like to go over my base with a sponge afterwards just to make sure there's no streaky marks, and I like my sponge to be damp. But if you're in a rush, simply use the palm of your hand in a stipple motion over your face. This will work in the same way that a sponge does. It will just help to even out any streaky marks that you might have left over from your fingers. If you would like a high street or drugstore dupe for this foundation, I really like to recommend the Milani 2-in-1 foundation and concealer. It's not a perfect match, but it's definitely close and I really like it. I've really been enjoying the new by Terry Hyaluronic Serum Concealer. I feel like I can apply this one straight from the doe foot applicator and it doesn't feel cakey on the skin. Sometimes I feel like if you apply them straight to the skin, too much product comes out, and especially when you start to get fine lines and wrinkles, the heavier coverage concealers really start to enhance them. But this really is a hydrating serum concealer. It really melts into the skin, still leaves you with a little bit of coverage, doesn't sheer out too much, but it doesn't look heavy or cakey, so I'm a huge fan of this. You can see I'm using my damp beauty blender to bounce this onto the skin. I feel like when I use my fingers it tends to sheer out too much and I don't want to smear it where I don't need it, so bouncing over it with my beauty blender keeps it in place and it just helps to melt it into the skin, and it also picks up any excess product. This brightens those areas, but it also reduces any redness in them areas too. Once I've done my base makeup, I like to go in and do my brows, but before I do my brows, I always set my eyelids and I also set my brows just to make sure that there's no excess oil or residue in my brows that's going to affect my brow pen. And I've recently rediscovered a love of the Mercier translucent powder. I've always really liked it, but recently I've really been loving it again. I don't know why. We tend to do this with products. They come and go in our lives, and although I always recommend it, I don't always reach for it on a daily basis. As you know, my go-to for every day is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Powder, and I am still going to use it in today's look, but I feel like my skin's been a little bit more oily recently, hence why I started reaching more so for the translucent powder by Mercier. That for me is a little bit more heavy duty. So I fill my brows in using my Urban Decay brow blade. I do have a tutorial on this, so I'm going to move straight onto the eyes. This is the NUDESTIX Magnetic Luminous Eye Colour in the shade Praia. It's what I describe as a beautiful seashell gold. It has a very subtle undertone of pink to it. Not noticeable, definitely gold, but it just has this warm undertone. Makes it very wearable for every day, especially if you're of a similar skin tone to myself. I like this for that nude effect. It's there, but it's very subtle. Also, the fact that it comes in a stick form makes it so simple to apply. It's literally done in under 10 seconds. I'm then taking Magic Aura, which is a NUDESTIX Stacks, on my finger and pressing that on the very centre of my lid just for some added dimension, and then I'm going to take a small pencil brush and apply the same colour on the inner corner of the eye for a very subtle highlight. This gives a dewy luminescence to the skin. It's so pretty, and this is actually part of a NUDESTIX Trio Stacks, so if you want this one you have to buy the Trio Stacks, and I will link everything below. I do have a discount code for NUDESTIX that will get you 10% off site-wide. When time is of the essence and it comes to my makeup, I use an eyeliner that is so simple to use, and this one for me is like a dream. It's a breeze to use because the nib is so long. This is the Benefit Roller Liner in brown. As you can see, I always tend to put the tip at the furthest point for my winged liner and pull it back on itself towards the eyelash line, and this creates almost like the perfect wing every time. Sometimes I'll just go in with a little brush to make that edge very crisp, but that is it. If you have hooded eyes, you can just put a little bit of eyeliner in the actual waterline itself. This will darken it, making it look like you've got a deeper, darker root to your lashes, which looks like eyeliner, but it doesn't take up any of your lid space. Once you've done what works for you, you can then curl your eyelashes. This part is really important. I feel like eyelash lift is the one part that really does make your eyes look super feminine, and therefore you don't need any false eyelashes because we're in a rush today. We don't have time for false lashes. So I've used my Refa eyelash curler. This also comes in a slightly different size for those of you that have a different curvature or smaller eyes. That one will work better for you, and I will link them both below for you. Then we're going to move on to mascara. If you have time, apply some eyelash primer first. This will help to make the most of your natural lashes. Today we don't have time for that, so I'm going to start with my lower eyelashes first. I don't always apply mascara to my bottom lashes, but when I do, I always start with them first. You'll find that if you apply mascara to your top lashes, then you look into a mirror and you try to do your bottom lashes, sometimes that mascara will transfer onto your top lid because you don't have time to wait for it to dry. So if you start with your lower lashes first, then do your top lashes, you won't get any transfer on the top lid. That is a little tip for those of you with slightly smaller lid space, because that tends to happen when you apply your mascara. This next product I've shared a few times already. I absolutely love it. It's the NUDESTIX Stacks in the shade Sunstone. This is a beautiful product that you can use whether you've already set your face or you haven't. It can go over powder and it goes beautifully over unpowdered skin straight onto your base makeup. If you're of a similar skin tone to me, this will work beautifully as a bronzer and a contour in one. It's not too orange and it isn't too cool, so it works beautifully as a bit of a hybrid. The formulation is a cream to powder, so you don't necessarily need to set this in place. Usually when we use a cream bronzer, we tend to go with a powder bronzer over the top or a translucent powder to set everything in place, but this is a cream to powder, so you don't have to worry about that. I find this lasts all day. I'm using a brush that has synthetic bristles, which has been designed to be used with powders or creams. If you use a natural hair bristle brush, you'll find that it tends to clog in the bristles when you use a cream. It doesn't seem to work quite as well. So a brush such as this one, which is a round top foundation brush by Decay Beauty, this is fantastic. I use this for blush, I use it for foundation, I use it for bronzer. I tend to reach for this a lot. It's quite similar to my IT Cosmetics No. 7 brush, which you know I've used for so many years if you've followed me for that long. I'm going to use the same brush for ease. I'm going to show you that you don't have to change all of your brushes. I'm going to use that same brush dipped into another NUDESTIX Stacks in the shade Cheeky Coral, which is beautiful. I'm going to pop this on the back half of the cheek. I like to apply it here because it gives a lifted look to the face. I'm not opposed to wearing a blush on the apples of the cheeks, but sometimes on some people it can drag the face downwards. So I think it's always nice on the back half of the cheek. It's not quite as in your face, especially as some of us can be a bit blush blind. We don't realise how much we're putting on. And if you pop it straight on the apples of the cheeks, you can look a bit like Aunt Sally, a bit clown-like. So go with the safer option and give your face a lifted look by popping it on the back half of the cheek. I'm going in with a blending brush by Decay Beauty, and I'm taking that Sunstone colour and I'm popping a little bit of this just through the socket. I've got a bit of extra time, so I thought, you know what, this will tie in the eye look with a little bit of that bronzer. It will softly sculpt this area. If you have very small lid space, you can forego this step. Oh, don't you hate it when you run out of product? I have refills for my Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Powder. I have hit the pan with this particular refill, but I do have a trick in case you've missed it so that you don't waste any of that powder around the border of your refill. I'm using a powder puff to set the remainder of my face. I like a little bit of glow just around my cheeks, so I'm not going over that area. Hence why I'm using a slightly smaller powder puff so I can be more strategic on where I'm setting. Lastly, as you know, I'm not a huge lipstick wearer, and as it is a day event, I'm going for something very natural. This is the iconic London Melting Touch Lip Balm in the shade Undone. And that's my realistic makeup in 15 minutes. That's very wearable, very appropriate for every day. I have quickly gone off and done my hair with my Dyson Airwrap. I do have a tutorial on how to achieve this. If you want to see, I will link it on screen for you now. Don't forget to take advantage of the discount codes for the NUDESTIX and the BK Beauty brushes. I will list and link everything I've used in the description bar. If you have any questions about this makeup or you have any suggestions for tutorials, please let me know in the comment section. I always do my best to get back to everybody. Please hit that subscribe button if you are new to my channel, or interact with it by liking or commenting, because it really does help with the algorithm. As always, I appreciate you coming back to support my channel by watching my videos, and I will see you in my next upload. Bye guys.